Hi, Mystery Writers. Wow, it's a crazy week. I am participating in NaNoWriMo, and this week I am a virtual attendee at 20 Books to 50K. So I've been totally crazy. I hope you're having a great writing week. Um, Today I want to talk about it's not writer's block. Writer's block is like a mindset, and when you get to a point in your story where it doesn't seem to be working and you don't know what to do next, um, that's usually a story problem. So I want to talk about 5 different ways that you can kick yourself out of that stuck place in your story when you're writing, because that's what we want to just keep that writing going forward. Yeah. And I know it's really hard. I had one of those instances the other day, and I had to rethink something. All right. So you're in your story, and all of a sudden you don't know where to go next. And I just want to reiterate, if you stop writing, it's not writer's block. You just don't know where to go next in your story. And you may feel as though you've written yourself into a corner with no way out, or you get bogged down with detail and you just completely lose the narrative drive and focus. Um, for whatever reason, your writing stops. So, I want to talk about the 3 ways that it's crazy week. I'm sorry. The 5 ways to get back in and move your story forward. So, here we go. One is to bridge to the next story event. Sometimes you're at one point in the story and you don't know how to get to the next point. That's where I was the other day. Before you go to the next action, write a scene where the protagonist reflects on what has happened so far. And just to let you know, what happened with me when I did this was that it didn't take very long. It was about 4 sentences, all right? And then all of a sudden the story was opened up and I was going forward. So, number 1, bridge to the next story event. Um, Sometimes it's character arc development. Um, so now's a good time to look at your character uh, arc for your main characters. Uh, Give one of your characters a problem, some kind of obstacle to overcome. It doesn't need to be big, but reveal a growth step or realization for that character. Um, so big character arcs aren't a major thing in mysteries, but this suggestion about giving your character a problem, even a little problem, can kick you on to keep writing. Um, so let's talk about the corner when you feel you've written yourself into a corner. It's time to brainstorm, and it's time to brainstorm not 1, but 3, 4, or 5 other story paths. How can you change the story path so it's leading not you, but your character forward in your story? You may have to do some revision on the parts you've already written, but you're going to get yourself and your story out of that corner. So it's a time for brainstorming. I know this one's a little more challenging because it takes some rethinking, as it were. Okay. And then another point where we can get stuck, your story may be going nowhere from detail overload. You're loading it with detail without action or response or conflict. So you want to double check that your detail moves the story forward. And if it doesn't, you cut it out and get to some dialogue and action. And I also just had this problem the other day. I didn't feel like my story was stuck, but I wanted to figure out a way to make my stuff detectives have to do, because that's just part of the job of being a detective. Um, I wanted to record those details, but without having it boring. And so I created a dialogue between my protagonist and her supporting character. She has another detective who's been assigned to work on the case with her for this particular case. Um, so details can be hard. Details can be really tough when you want to get them in your story, but you don't want to overload your story and feel like it's going nowhere. Because if you just write the details, well, it's pretty much a snorer. You don't want that anywhere in your story. Okay, so detail overload. All right, and the fifth one is a biggie. It's story structure. Sometimes you can spend time in a specific section of your story and you actually lose the narrative drive. What is driving the story forward? Because remember, every scene needs to move the story forward. So sometimes we can get lost in the forest for the trees, and we don't see how that story is going to move forward. It's one of the things I like about doing a plan before I start writing. I know where the story is supposed to go next, but even so, you can get to this point where you have no idea how you're going to get from this point in the story to that next major plot point. So the story is lost in your head because, like the old adage of the trees in the forest, you see only the trees, and you're lost in all these trees of your story. So get back to your story structure, and to get the story moving forward. I always like to think, when I'm writing a scene, I like to think of what, not the end of the story, but what the next plot point is, and how this particular scene is leading my characters and the story to that next plot point. So use story structure to get back to moving your story forward. From Aristotle's three acts to story beats, you want to take a look at where your story is now in that story structure and get back to the structure. Okay, those are 5 ways you can kind of nudge your story forward when it feels like it's slogging down, or you feel like you're stuck and you don't know where to go next. I know there's advice that says just keep writing, to kick you out of a stuck place, but um, I'm not sure that always works, because especially if you're stuck in details or something like that, you could keep writing, but you're not really doing your story a favor. So think of these other ways of kicking yourself out of that stuck place. We all get them. I just told you a couple of times, when just recently, my story, I was like, what do I do next? And this scene sucks, all that kind of stuff. So be aware of what's going on in your scene, and look at ways to enliven your scene and move that story forward. So, this is really short, but I'm telling you, this is a crazy, crazy week for me. As a matter of fact, I think for today, I've written 34 words on my novel for NaNoWriMo, so it's got a lot of work to do later after I finish what's going on in 20 books to 50K today. So, and just as a side note, um, I highly recommend 20 Books to 50K. It's an annual conference for writers, and whether you're choosing um, independent publishing or you want to go with a traditional publisher, there's just an amazing, amazing amount of advice. So they already have the schedule up for 2022, so you might want to take a look at 20 Books to 50K. Um, there's just a lot of great information at the conference, and I'm going virtually just because of my COVID great fears, and I'm a high risk person, so the idea of being in a closed space with a lot of strangers just totally freaks me out. But you are able actually to go to Las Vegas. It's held in Las Vegas. Anyway, it's a great conference. All right. So, anyway, if you get stuck looking at a blank page and not knowing what to write next, take a look at your story and look for missing pieces and that overall structure. And I hope these little tips helped you. It's something we all struggle with as we get to a stuck point, but the main takeaway I want you to have from today's little session is it's not writer's block, okay? There are ways to get around being stuck without giving yourself this dreaded idea of writer's block, and especially for something like NaNoWriMo, where you're writing every day, you just need to keep writing. And and if you have your structure in place, and you have an overall idea of your mystery, it's going to help you. So no writer's block. There's no such thing. Just use these ideas to kick yourself out of that stuck place and keep going. All right. Thank you so much.